Hey, I'm Jay. In this video, we're going to be talking about finishing a sculpt in Zbrush and making a final image and Fibermesh for hair. We're going to be going from this to this. Let's get started. All right, first off, I just want to thank everybody who was there for the first video that I dropped last week. If you couldn't tell, I was not sure how that was gonna go, and you guys are awesome. The video got like 10,000 views in a week, and there was all these comments that were all nice and supportive. I don't know, man. It's just really cool. Thank you all. I hope I don't let you down. And let's start talking about making hair. Okay, so we're gonna jump right in right now, and we're gonna start with the eyebrow and the eyelash, and then we're gonna, do the whole hair thing. I'm gonna speed it up towards the end because it is like the same techniques over and over again. But right off the top, I just want to go over the few fundamental things to know so you can kind of follow along on what I'm doing if you want to do this yourself. But essentially, if we jump over here into Zbrush, I'm pretty much doing the majority of the work, okay, with the move brush right here and polygroups, which is over here. If you don't know, polygroups are a color-coded group of polygons that like a selection group, but you can look that up if you don't know what that is. And right here by clicking polyframe, I can see the color-coded polygroups. I can also turn off the line and just see the fill color, blah, blah, blah. But in hair, we're gonna use polygroups to make groups, in the hair, and those groups get smaller and smaller so we can do fine details. But I use polygroups a lot, and I'm pretty much doing all of the styling, almost all the styling, with the move brush. You can see I even put all my little parameters that I need for doing hair stuff on the move brush right here, but I can show you where these things are. In the move brush, if I go to Fibermesh, you can see there's preserved length. And the other one to know is front collision tolerance, okay? This isn't highlighted right now because we don't have hair. But if we did, it tries to figure out like if something's in front of something else. And in general, it's just good to have this parameter so you can turn it off. Preserved length is pretty much what it sounds like. If you have preserved length at 0, you can grab, with the move brush, you can grab the hair and just stretch it out. But if you put preserved length at 100, then you move it around with the move brush and the hair never changes length. And then obviously you can pick any number in between. So that's pretty much it. The move brush and polygroups. You'll see this over and over again. We'll start out with the eyebrows and the eyelashes. So you'll probably get a sense of how it works right there. And then we'll go through the whole hairstyle. Let's jump in. Let's start Fibermesh for the eyebrows and the eyelashes, because then it'll look more like a person. When using the mask, we get to really see what the eyebrow is gonna look like. Okay, let's do some Fibermesh, see what we get. Fibermesh, I actually saved a little preset here we can start with at least. This is probably too much. So why don't we turn down, is that max fibers? Yeah, why don't we do, okay, no. How's this? Too much? Might be too much again. What if we did 1? This might be good. How about 1.5 and we call it? Okay. The length, okay. Let's call that. Now for the move brush, we're gonna preserve the length and front collision tolerance 0. These two settings are in the brush settings. Again, maybe a separate video, but this is just so that I can groom the hair with my move brush. So right now that means this all goes right here. All right, I'm gonna speed this little part up right here where I get the hairs into position, but just taking the time to place it and paying attention to the direction of the hairs. Preserved length, I'm gonna drop a little bit so that I can make some longer hairs right here. Preserve length back up. Okay, let's see what we got with this. Doing my Shift R for my BPR render. And not perfect, but might be fine. All right, spending a little bit more time grooming now. Also incorporating that pinch brush, trying to get just kind of the swoops in the hair and just the general flow. Okay, pretty soon gonna have to move on. Can't spend too much time here. Just want to make sure the eyebrow is looking good enough, Yeah, overall I think this is gonna be okay. Boom, okay. I think that's pretty good. Back to here, boink. So can we do some eyelashes the same way? Probably. Back to the mask pen. Kind of varying my pressure here. When you vary the pressure, it varies the size and the density. So I'm actually intentionally having the lower lid have less. So we'll just see what we get here. We'll do the same preset that I have, facial hair base. Let's get the length down. Yeah, this might work actually. Looks like we got a pretty good amount. That worked out. How about for the amount, we do just a little bit more. We'll do 1.1. All right, accept that. Okay, so what we're gonna do first with these is I'm going to make a poly group for all of the top lashes. So if you use the mask pen, then anytime you touch a fiber mesh, it selects the whole mesh. So now we've got upper eyelashes and lower eyelashes, right? Oop. Oh man, I didn't turn symmetry on. So we're gonna do that again. Okay, symmetry's on, mask pen. If I just touch these fibers, they'll become masked. So that's how I can select all these. I'll group masked. Boom, so now I can select the top lashes, and then I can start to put these into position here. Okay. Preserved length I'm gonna take down now, and I'm gonna start to pull these out. Okay. All right, so now with the mask pen, I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna make this, here, let's just make this a button right here. Group masked, I'm gonna make a G hotkey. So, and let's take off line. So here we go. Now we can really see it, boom. There's a clump, there's a clump, there's a clump. So I'm making these poly groups so that I can clump them, make the, you know, the eyelashes how we would expect, kind of come into a tip. All right, now I can switch to my pinch brush and I can mask by poly group 100%. So now if I go to this poly group, that way it's only pinching the poly group I'm selecting.
All right, now so arranging all these clumps and individual hairs is kind of the most important part of any kind of groom, and it's where most of the manual labor comes in. So just by mixing and repeating the creating of clumps and then grouping those with pinch brush or move brush and moving those is what's going to make it look more natural, and is going to be the tool to kind of sculpt, you know, the believability of these kinds of hair follicles. Again, always important to have reference, and, you know, just have fun. I mean, I think it's kind of cool. I mean, I don't know. It's obviously really detail oriented, but in the final stages, getting in there and moving like one hair follicle at a time can be really rewarding. And so after you do these clumps that you make by hand, at the end, you can just auto groups and every hair will be its own group. And then you can finally put all those hairs into position.
All right, so I think we made some really good progress. I just ran out of time, but I want to do the hair like whipping around. So I'm going to come back and do that in another session, and then why not just render it too. So overall, I think a successful study. The hair is kind of a stretch goal. You know, I just wanted to make it cool for an image, but also it's a way for me to keep practicing hair and the use of fiber mesh and stuff in a quick way. So overall, I think I'm pretty happy with how it's come out. Why don't we get a little bit more perspective in here and get a nice render. Let's get AO in there too. Why don't we? So overall, I think we have smiling girl vibes. That's good. And overall, I'm pretty happy with how it came out. That's it for right now. But I imagine through the magic of editing, I'll be back in the next session so that we can keep going with the hair and finish up. Right. All right. So it's been a couple days now. Oh. Maybe you can hear that. I'm getting some work done on the garage, so hopefully that's not too crazy. Okay, so it's been a couple days, and we're gonna come back and finish it now. And this is kind of a good opportunity to point out that, especially when I'm doing faces, if I have the luxury of taking more than one day, coming back to it, you can just see all the things that feel wrong, you know? It just hits you really quick. The more time you work on it, the more you kind of get used to it, and eventually it's hard to see things that don't feel so unnatural. But you know, we can use kind of our own radars, like right immediately when you see it, that I'm like, oh, I think I can improve this. So I'm going to check back with my references. And so I'm going to start off today's session with just doing like big kind of changes. So we already have this saved, so we know that we can't mess it up, but I'm going to try to finagle some proportions a little bit and, you know, get myself a little bit happier with the naturalistic feeling of the face before we move on to doing Fibermesh for the hair and making an image. All right, so let's get in here and start doing some big changes.
All right, so we're going to be doing the big impactful changes right off the bat, since, you know, I'm coming back to this at another session. Again, the use of subdivisions is going to be huge right now because I get to float up and down. But you're going to see I'm going to do some proportion kind of adjustments and also just clean up some forms. I think especially with faces, but in general, when you're working on something for an extended period of time, you just get kind of used to seeing things the way they are, at least with me. So I get a little blind to some things. So quickly going to go in and try to adjust the things that I notice right off the bat. So in this case, I think it might just be like the shape of the smile, you know, the wonky ears, which are going to sadly stay kind of wonky, but doing the neck right now too, which I kind of ignored before. Cleaning up the jawline. So, oh, and then the eyes. So yeah, you know, there's the big impact stuff, and then there's just subtle stuff that add up to the overall feel. So in general, I think I want to make the smile look more natural, and I want to make her look more like a young female. Those are probably the things that jumped to me right off the bat. And I'm doing some sculpting on the neck because I kind of thought I want to do a portrait for the render, and I think I want to include the neck. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff I'm doing right now. So sculpting, repositioning, kind of everything that we were doing before, just in a somewhat quick session right off the bat. And this can be kind of like a disease for me, man, like tweaking forever. I think tweaking is a big part of it, but this is a study somewhat. You know, I'm trying to put somewhat of a time limit. But if there were no time limit and perfection was the goal, it would take multiple days and I would tweak forever. And here we are, freshening up the wrinkles.
Let's go over these wrinkles. Maybe we can just get the inflate brush and just kind of come and inflate in between these guys. Might make some nice looking wrinkles, get the scrunch look, you know. With this expression, we're really playing with compression. I'll grab the pinch brush right now too. Why not? But like you can see, with the pinch brush, we can just kind of help that compression along, kind of squeeze in the middle of stuff. Can even make a little S shape if we wanted.
All right, gonna tidy up these wrinkles a little bit more, and then we'll start speeding this up again. I'm also just gonna go over the whole snarl kind of area. I think it's important. I think of the snarl right here and these eyelids and the squint as somewhat of a focal point. I think that's where we're going to look first. And I think if we get a natural kind of cute scrunch on the nose and the eyes, it's a delicate balance, I think, because I want to get a scrunch in the eyelids, right? But it's not an old man type of wrinkle, and it's not, don't want it to be unappealing. You want it to feel like a nice, genuine, big smile. A lot of the brushes I'm using still just damn standard and clay buildup or clay tubes. And I might even break symmetry again a little bit, but there we go. I want to make sure that it doesn't look too symmetrical because that's going to break that believability.
All right, so this is the progress that we have so far right now. I have loaded up where we started, and this is where we're at. So just some minor adjustments. I feel like in general, just feeling a little bit more natural. A little bit more compression in the mouth. Did a little bit of work on the neck, and I feel like I resolved kind of the shapes of the mouth scrunching there. So this is where we're at. Let's start off with like a little render here. Let's do an image that's like somewhat straight on. I think this is kind of representative. It's kind of based on the reference image. It lets us do kind of a portrait and crop in however we want. All right, so this looks all right. So I think we're about ready to do the hair. Let's start with the hair. That's the last big challenge of this one. I think it's gonna end up making more of an appealing image. That's what I'm hoping for in the end. I mean, we are doing kind of an exercise and trying to keep the stakes a little bit low, make the goal achievable. But why not try to make a cool image at the same time? And for me, I want to keep practicing Fibermesh and going faster. So let's do that. Let's just start making some hair. That's going to help this character look more like a young woman. And overall, I think getting us closer to the final composition is going to give me more cues and where to focus the little fine tuning at the end. Because overall, I'm kind of happy with this. But I think we could take some more steps to make it a little bit more natural, a little bit more organic and believable. Still feels very symmetrical to me, but why not just put the hair on now, and then we'll do those finishing touches at the end. So let's start doing some Fibermesh. Okay, we need to start by making the hairline. All right. This doesn't need to be too perfect either. So again, keeping the mask a little lighter, a little bit more feathered in the areas where I want less hair and thinner hair. So for her, kind of around the temples and a little bit in the front here, I want to create, the illusion of some thinner baby hairs, maybe even some flyaways. We'll see. But I think this is going to work. This is by no means perfect. Actually, you know what's going to help? I'm going to grab an image of a girl with a buzzed haircut. All right, boom. Let's get like a 3/4 view. Okay, this works. Oh, this works. Reference really helps because it was different. What do you know? And the female hairline is different than a male hairline, so definitely pay attention to the differences there and get some reference like I just did. This is gonna make it better. And even though we're doing a couple images, right, we're gonna be a little flattering with the crops and stuff. You'd be surprised. The more accurate you can get things, the more naturalistic everything's gonna come out in the end, really. All right, so let's grow some hair. All right, so maybe these hairs. I just threw off a render, by the way. We're still in the preview settings. As soon as we hit accept, a lot of these values we're not gonna be able to change. So it's important that we try to get this good. So I just threw off a render right now. I think the tips need to be thinned. And in general, maybe the hair could be thinner actually. So let's try that. So I'm gonna sit here and wait for a render again. Like I say, it's important that we get the size of the hair and the amount of the hair, like the width of the little hairs and the overall amount, as close to accurate as we can in the beginning. We're gonna be able to change length and style it and stuff, but we're not gonna be able to come back. So if we start work on the hairstyle and then we think, oh, we need more hairs, you're kind of out of luck with the way Fibermesh works. So I'm gonna throw off another render and let's see what we got. All right, so here we are again. Still feel a little thick to me. Okay, I think this parameter is the coverage, if I'm not mistaken. So if we made coverage 9 or 8, what would happen? Yeah, so that changes the thinness. Okay. So let's see what this looks like. Throw another render. Okay, so this hair seems a bit softer. I think the amount and everything's gonna work fine. I think it's gonna work well enough for our purposes here. So I think it's time to hit accept and start styling some hair. Let's do it. Okay, so we'll hit accept. Boop. And then do you want to do fast preview mode? I'm gonna say no. You can see it's already kind of bogging down my machine. So, maybe I should have, I don't know. It means I can just click it right here though. So that's the difference. I'll keep fast preview on right now. It does make it noticeably faster. So first things first, I got symmetry on and we're gonna yank the hair out because it's gonna be longer hair. So I just got my move brush. I got my preserved length set to 0. And we're just gonna be yanking out some hair now. Okay, so I'm gonna start with a part. Okay, I'm gonna turn off symmetry now. And with my brush, I'm gonna start painting these to get it generally apart. Remember, if you use the mask pen, it actually selects hairs. So that's what I'm going to use to get the part. Just making sure I get all of them. And I made that G hotkey. So let's check our group here. There you go. So if I unhide the group, there you go. Perfect part. All right, now we got 2 poly groups. Let's start by flattening this one out. And just mush this all down right now. I can just drag the hair down. Is what I'm gonna do to cut it, and then just hold shift. Shift, like the smooth brush, is what shortens it now. Back to this, same thing. Okay. We can turn on mask by poly groups now, and I can start styling both these sides like while I'm seeing it, which is gonna be useful. Yeah, it turned out that fast preview was kind of like really important. So, because if this is this slow now, I can only imagine. Some ear poking through now, which is pretty good. All right, starting to look like a hairstyle. That's good. That's good. And I can already tell that the neck feels a little large. I just feel like getting everything into context is huge on being able to make some judgment calls. So getting everything there first. I always think it's important to get as many of the elements as the characters you can together so you can work on it as a whole, because you can't just work on each individual feature in a vacuum and then hope for the best, you know, because that's probably not gonna work out for you. Okay, so right now I'm gonna do some, I'm gonna grab one of the groom brushes. I'm gonna use Turbulence here. I don't use a whole lot of groom brushes, but Turbulence really helps. Turbulence is just gonna give me some waviness and some clumpiness. You can come back with the smooth brush, so it's just a way to get some irregularities with the hair. As you can see, it's already working. So I'm finally gonna throw off a render right now, and we'll see. Let's see what it looks like right now. Probably not gonna look like the best, right? But we wanna see how our Fibermesh is being interpolated while we render. Like the curves that we see in Zbrush aren't the actual final curves. There's gonna be some smoothing involved, and it's just gonna come out looking a lot different. So even though we got some kinks in here, you know, we have to throw off a BPR render to see really what it's looking like. And it's gonna take a little bit of time, so let's render and check back in with how it looks. All right, so this is where we're at now. Definitely big difference. So I think we did go real thin with the hair, which is gonna be all right, but I think we're gonna have to utilize like Turbulence a lot. It's so fine, you know, it just looks real thin. It looks real like it's looking like one shape, right? So here, let's get in here. Let's start messing around. All right, I think more Turbulence. More Turbulence. Okay, I think we're gonna try and do some groups finally, okay? Let's get some group action going. So I'm gonna start painting with my mask pen. We have 2 groups now, right? The left and the right. Over time, as we work on this style, we're gonna get more and more groups. I'm gonna use these different groups to put sections of the hair to kind of build our style. And later we'll make smaller groups to do clumps, and then finally we'll even start doing some individual hairs as flyaways. But right now I think it'd be useful to get some more breakup. So I think first thing is getting some of these to be pulled back. Doing this. With these front hairs, I think we're just gonna make a group. Like with these, we're just gonna make this a clump. So here's kind of our first clump. You can see I'm just grabbing the pinch brush. I'm gonna pinch this all together. And now we made a little hero clump here. Could just keep changing camera angles. You know, I'm trying to get like a swoop kind of thing on this. Like this just fell out, you know, from behind her ear. All right, so now making that part that goes behind her ear too, that helps me with pushing this part down. So we got a couple more sections now. We're gonna throw off another render, and let's see what we got here. Be sure to turn off the poly group so that you can actually see what your render looks like. Let's see if this feels a little bit more natural than what we had before. Bam. All right, so sides looking a little bit better. Still, to be honest, we might have gone too thin. It's okay, we gotta keep trugging along here. We're just gonna have to do more and more layers, I think. More and more layers. So we'll just paint a couple. Got the beginnings of a hairstyle here. Let's get some more clumps here. Let's do right here. Let's do one in here, I think. Like, let's grab that one. Okay. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
All right, so gonna speed this up here because there's gonna be a ton of adjusting. So you'll see mostly what's going on here is I'm making polygroups, either by using the mask pen and painting a selection and then grouping it, or by doing auto groups. But pretty much I'm just using the move brush, and I'm using mask by polygroups at 100%. You can see actually down there at the bottom of the screen. And I'm just kind of styling it. This is kind of the grooming part, you might call it. I mean, you know, not like actual grooming, but in Zbrush's terms. So the thing is we have to wrangle all these fibers. So, you know, just like we are with the sculpt and with forms, we're going from simple to complicated. We're breaking these up into more and more groups. So I want to make sure that, you know, my foundation is generally right before breaking it up into more groups. But then this is kind of the fun part too, is creating some clusters of hair and having it overlap and interweave. And in my case too, I'm trying to do some hair that's flying around. So I'm going to make smaller clumps and have them come towards the camera. So I'm hoping to not only make her look, you know, more like a young woman, but a more dynamic picture. And you see also I'm having to rip off a lot of BPR renders because, you know, it's the only real way to see what Fibermesh is going to look like. So that's pretty much the process. Make groups, use move brush, and rinse and repeat.
So you can see it's coming along. So I just kind of want the hair to be like, woo, and coming towards you. I think it would be cool, like we're talking about, getting more dynamic, more action in there, but also I think we're going to get to use depth of field, and it should be kind of cool coming in and out of perspective like that. So I think what's going to go on here is I'm going to position these with fast preview on so we get the benefit of the speed. And then I'm going to turn fast preview off to see what it looks like. Turns out it's not that accurate. So it's going to be kind of like she's whipping her hair, I think, is the idea. Maybe there's some wind, I don't know. Hair's looking better. Looks like it's flipping around and it's kind of wild. I think this is cool. Cool. Okay, so I think I'm on the right track. I like how it's looking. I think I'm just going to keep going in this direction and then maybe make some more flyaway hairs. So I'm just going to spend a little bit more time on it, and then I think we're going to go back to refining the face, and then we can start doing the render. So the hair's coming along, I'm happy to say. I guess we're going to do it on this one. So we're going to do our little trick again. Do auto groups. And then we'll just preserve the length, yep. And then we're just going to go crazy a little bit.
Auto groups will put every individual hair in its own group. So now with the move brush and mask by polygroup on, I get to just grab some hairs and tear them out one by one to make all these flyaways, which is actually pretty fun, I think.
Cool, now it's all crazy. All right, now let's see what this looks like. Pretty cool. The flyaways that are really thin, I think, are really successful. So this side, I think I want to make this more, like this side I think is a little better. So using the groom blower and using the turbulence probably. Groom blower. All right, now I'm gonna spend a little bit of time on the face. Yeah, overall, I'm kind of happy with it. Well, I'm seeing if we can simplify a little bit of the forms and then exaggerate some of the wrinkles, just a few of them, like around the eyes, I think around the smile. Maybe there's something we can do with the teeth, I don't know. And I think also we're gonna make the neck a lot smaller. Make the neck smaller. I think that's gonna make her feel younger. It'll make the head feel bigger in a way because we're making the neck smaller. So we're gonna make it a little smaller. Just scaled the whole thing. Cool. All right, let's move this light. Let me get a little bounce light in here just to see what's going on. Sometimes when you're doing, sometimes when you're working in ZBrush, like because the shadows always there in the material, kind of like the Fresnel, I'll notice like you know, some of the shapes and forms aren't the best down here because it's kind of hidden. So it's always good to move the light around. Pinch brush also really helps seal up seams and wrinkles. You can use it to straighten stuff. Pinch brush definitely part of my like finishing process. Let's put a little color in these eyes, why don't we? So with the standard, let's just paint color. Okay, I'm gonna drop it already, boom. Then I'm gonna do some shadow. What if I just dragged out something? So focal shift was -30.
All right, so now we have our eyeballs on there, finally painted. A little late in the game, actually, to be honest, to have an eye like painted on the character. But you'll see now I'm diving into the areas around the eye because things jump out like immediately. Essentially like the eye shape and tweaking the eyelashes too. So just focusing in on that focal point, the eyes, and trying to refine those shapes. Darting around in the nose now too, and you'll see I'm gonna go to the cheek too because you know, I'm pretty much a squirrel, and anytime something jumps out at me, I'm jumping around to it. But it's the same kind of order of operations. I'm throwing off a render right now, which is really important in my case because of the Fibermesh. Like for me to get an accurate, you know, view of how the image is gonna look, I have to throw off a render. Going into the eyelashes now and creating some clumps, just like I did on the hair. And also I can do this asymmetrically to give more personality and naturalism in the eyelashes, you know, making unique clumps. So yeah, refining, getting really close to the end now. So important for me to check my render, my BPR render, after I, you know, do some tweaks. So you can see just really refining the shapes. Same goes for the lower jaw now. I'm going to be trying to finish up the lip shape and, you know, just how the smile is reacting, like the muscles in the lower lip and the chin. I'm also kind of simplifying this area, I think, and that's a good place to start if you're not sure how to resolve something. So sometimes I just simplify the forms. So yeah, I'm going to keep refining for a little bit. Why don't we jump over and I'll show you the end result after some more tweaking, and we can look at a little bit of before and after, and then I'll show you how I compose the final image.
Okay, so here's the final model that we ended up with right here. So I've done a little bit more tweaking here. So on the third day when I got ready to do the renders, everything jumped out at me again. So like we talked about, you know, when I come at something in a fresh new session, especially the next day, things just jump out at me. So I don't know, I feel like I should be able to do this faster, but maybe it has something to do with going to sleep and waking up. But I immediately thought, oh, this needs to be repositioned. So this is where we ended up at the last session, and then when I came back I tweaked it, bam, right here. So I think this looks a hell of a lot more natural. Essentially the big thing I did was I made the eyes closer. So the eyeballs and the eyes, if you watch right there, they're a lot closer. That feels a lot more natural. I scaled the nose just a tad and I dropped it lower, and then I poly painted the lips, which I think just made it a lot more natural to look at. You also kind of see what the lips are doing. So even though we're making a black and white image, we're not like really texturing it. Just poly painting this darker value, I think made a big difference. So yeah, this is where we ended up. So once we ended up here, I'm ready to start doing renders to make it a final image. So we'll quickly just go over the basics of what I did there, and you can take a look at my Photoshop document. Rendering's probably like its own topic, but I wanted to show you all the way through the end. So first up, you want to make sure you have a camera. Like right now I want to draw, and for the camera I have it on 85. That's a pretty natural looking portrait. It's a common focal length for portraits. It has less distortion, which is kind of what you want. 50 would probably work too, or something in between. You can see that's 50 right there. But something like 85 makes a fine portrait. So you want to make sure when you're doing renders in ZBrush, you want to make sure your document size is big. So if I come down to document right now, I just have mine at like HD, 1080p. You can change this to whatever you want. But for instance, we can just double this. I'll hit yes. And then it just doubled my canvas, but it did like stretch this. It flattened it and stretched it. So I have to press Control N to clear this canvas. I'll press tab to bring my UI back. So it's already on draw. I can just draw up my model again. I'll go to edit view. And now we're back in 3D. So if I come up to document again and I go to zoom and I zoom out, boo, now you can see the canvas. So just like Photoshop, I'm zooming out, I'm looking at my canvas. So this canvas is actually 4K. So if I scale this up, when I render these images, this will be a 4K image. But then we set up something like this. When I'm doing render passes, I'll usually open up the little tab right here on the left, and then I can just dock my render palette. So let's see. Probably the first thing we want to do is make nicer shadows, soft shadows, especially with portraits. So the basics here are the angle and the raise. That's pretty much all I'll change. A good starting point, you can just do 12 for the angle and then do 24 for the raise. It's a easy rule of thumb to remember to double the raise for the angle number. The angle number is going to give you kind of the width of the softness of your shadows, kind of stretch that out. And then the raise is how many rays it's using, so it makes it softer, more and more blurry. But it'll take longer. So you can try this out, and then if you need more, you can up it. But like I say, it'll take longer. So why don't we just move a light around and we'll try a render and see what happens. So I just hit Shift R, which is the default for doing a BPR render. And then we'll see what our first initial settings get us. All right, so here's our render. You can see it's a big difference than the preview, right? So now if I go to document and I hit actual, bam, this is my actual resolution of the image I'm making. So you can see we're getting cast shadows from the hairs, which is cool. Let's see if we can get it. Here we go. Here's a cast shadow from the nose. You can see it's a bit more soft. Scroll around here. Okay, so here's the neck. All right, so you see we got a couple banding right here, some banding. We might be able to fix that with the amount of rays. So here's some basics. I'll do something like this. And I'll save this out. When you're ready to save things out, you can go to BPR render pass in the render settings. And if you click this top left one, it's the composed or the composited image. Okay, so if I just click this, it'll prompt me and I can save a PSD or a PNG or whatever, right? And that's true of all these passes. So what you want to do is lock off your camera. You don't want to change your camera. If you're worried about losing it, if you go to Z App Link properties, hit custom 1 or custom 2, it'll save the camera. So that's just a little trick in general. You can just do that if you're worried about, that way if you like tumble the camera around, you're like, oh no, you can come up here and hit custom 1 again and it'll go back to it. When you save these things out, you do need to save out your mask. Okay, so you save out a mask. You'll need to save out the depth. The shadows you can save out if you want. I'll usually save out one key light and I'll save out the shadow from that. And then I'll just start saving out the composited images. You only need, one version of the mask, one version of the depth. Those things aren't changing. You could even do SSFS if you want. And to do that, you'd go into the render properties and hit SSS, and then it would render that. You only need one of those too. But then what I would do is I would start moving the light around. So then maybe I want to come from the side now, and I want to do, an intense one from the side. Okay. Then we'll see what that looks like. Okay, so now we have this light coming in from the side. I would just come up here to the composited one and just name this, light 1 or light 2 or something like that. All right, so I'll do that for a few lights. The more lights, kind of the merrier, but we're just doing something pretty fast right now. I just did 2 actually. I did 2 rim lights and I did a key. And then we jump into Photoshop and we open everything up. So here we are in Photoshop and you can see I have 2 shots actually. Here's another shot, another angle. But here's all my composited. This is my final Photoshop document. So we'll just go through and we'll break out all the different layers and what they're doing. So here's the final image. If I turn off some curves, in my passes folder, I have all the passes. So I can turn them all off. And here's our base. So to make my base, over in ZBrush, I turned off shadows. Boop. I turned off shadows and then I rendered my key position. My key light, that first major render, and then I rendered it out with the shadows on. So if I jump back over to Photoshop, this is, boom, this is my render. This is like my key render. So I have the light coming kind of straight on, and I rendered it out and I saved it. So this is kind of a point of reference, I guess. And also I just have this here in case I want to blend it in and out with the layers that I'm making. Okay, so this same position I rendered, but I turned off the shadows. So now we have no shadows, but I can add them back in, boop, because I have the shadow right here. So if we drag this up to take a look at it, the shadow is just a black and white image. So I can set it to multiply. And then by changing the opacity, we have control over. So like right now, if I wanted to lighten the shadows, I can just change the opacity. I also have the AO. AO is in ZBrush right here. You just click ambient occlusion, and then it'll be included right here, boop, in your render. Then we have the lights we were talking about. So here's my first light, little rim light right here, and my rim too. Overall, pretty subtle. Here's nothing, here's this. It just brightens it up so that the dark, as the forms turn, it gets dark, right? It just looks a little bit unnatural. So by having some of this, it just lightens it up. So our depth map is a Z depth, right? It's white closest to camera, black farthest from the camera. So you get a linear depth in 3D. We use this to drive the lens blur. And also, since we have this map, I just used it as a soft light. And essentially what that did is it brightened what's closer to the camera. So you can see what it did with the hair. I just thought it's interesting. It's a little bit of a layer effect. You can see how it even like kind of pulls the face away from the neck. I sometimes do that because I think it makes the image look cool. And sometimes it doesn't, so I don't use it then. But that's it. This is my final image. All right, so that's it for this video on this project. Thank you for joining me on this one. And thank you to everyone who left me those comments on the first video. I really appreciate it. You guys are awesome. I hope you learned a thing or two. If you did enjoy the video, hit that like button, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.